Hey guys, what is up? I am coming at you right now. No fancy effects, nothing. It's just me and you, and we're chatting because it's a lore review. I recently finished reading through Servants of the Machine God, collection of short stories, and I got some opinions on it that I'd like to share. First of all, this book right here, it's a little bit of a false advertisement. I was looking forward to reading some stories, some tales of the Adeptus Mechanicus, my main army faction. However, in this collection of short stories, the first full 200 pages only deal with Imperial Knights, which, if you collect AdMech, you know they're not AdMech. Knights are their own thing. Sometimes they ally with the AdMech or are loyal to them, but they are in fact completely separate entities. So it was extremely disappointing to get this book with a Castellan robot, you know, Cybernetica Datasmith on the cover, getting into some AdMech-y, tech priesty things, and then have to read 200 pages of Knights just to get to the next portion. The first two stories, Defiant and Becoming, both by Andy Clark, are related in their sequencing. I believe they're like kind of sequels to each other. They're all right. It's 100% about night culture though. Doesn't even mention if they're, you know, loyal to the AdMech or just to Terra. And then the third story, Knights of the Imperium by Graham McNeil, goes on for another 150 or so pages. It is by far the longest story in the collection. I do want to point out that it is pretty good. Knights of the Imperium is a good story. AdMech are actually the antagonists of it, so while it's not an AdMech focused story, they do still feature pretty prominently. And Mnemonix, the sort of primary Agent of Chaos, is one of the coolest AdMech characters that I've seen, and has inspired me to kind of create something on the battlefield that will be in his kind of image and or concept. So props to Graham McNeil for Knights of the Imperium. Actually a good story, even though it was Knights. And then after that, after the 200 pages of just Knights, we get another 100 or so pages, slightly less than 100 pages of Titans. And yes, Titans are a part of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The Legio Titanicus is a part of AdMech technically, but it's so different from what's expected. When you get to the point where you're 290 pages into the book and there have been 0 stories about tech priests, you know, I kind of lose faith in humanity a little bit. Anyway, the Titan stories, they are all really boring to me. We have Of Gods and Men by Andy Smiley, Hunting Ground by Ian St. Martin, and Vengeance of the Immortal by Gav Thorpe. And the thing about Titan stories is that every Titan story reads like pretty much exactly the same. I can't even distinguish these different stories in my head. Every single one of them is like, oh, I'm a god when I'm in this machine, but I'm so weak when I'm outside of it. And I'm like, yeah, that's what a Titan would do, but like they say it 3 times over in as many pages. And it's just really kind of, it gets old quickly. And it's like, we get it. Titans are big and powerful, and you're just a human that's inside of one. I understand that. Cool. Next. We finally get to a proper AdMech story with the Zeng Cipher by Josh Reynolds, which is a good story about a group of Vanguard, and it really kind of gets across the body horror aspect of AdMech really well as giving us a good picture into the minds of sort of like a lowly soldier, a cog in the machine, if you will. That's explicitly remarked on several times in the story. And it is very literally interpreted, but it was a good read for sure. The following couple stories, Clade and Vanguard, also deal with this. Clade deals with Cataphront Subverters, and a tech priest fighting against a heretical tech priest, I believe. It's by Rob Sanders. It's an okay story. It's kind of boring to me. Servitors, I think, are not good things to write about because they're just kind of boring. They're basically just robots with big guns, and there's not much interest to be gleaned from them, I don't think. The tech priest himself is like, yeah, there's something there, but that wasn't a story that captured my imagination really in any way. Vanguard by Peter Fahervari, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, is what follows, and that is a decent story about, Vanguard. What is interesting about this story is that it's mostly about Skitarii, and the main character, Alpha Primus, is hinted at being a Xenos construct, a specifically Tau person who was converted into the folds of the AdMech and made to be a Skitarii. Which is kind of a unique, interesting concept that is, while hinted at, never fully explained, which I think is actually probably a good thing. And a semi-heretical tech priest kind of taking the reins of the battle. I think the story goes on a little bit long, and it has a very kind of unfulfilling conclusion. I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say it doesn't end well for our heretical tech priest. It's okay. Some of the parts were pretty interesting. I thought the middle sort of battle, the main battle sequence was written pretty well. You know, it gets into things like Iron Striders and other sort of like AdMech aspects that we see on the tabletop that aren't often represented in fiction, so that was kind of cool. Following that is the Enigma of Flesh, which I think is one of the best stories in the book. The Enigma of Flesh is dealing with our sort of titular Castellan robots here, plus a data smith. And what this story does is it really nails, I think, the interaction between AdMech and other forces of the Imperium. They're allies with the Imperial Guard, Space Marines, etc. And this time we see the Imperial Guard mixed with the AdMech in really interesting ways. And we see the AdMech actually being declared as heretical for fielding Castellan robots, sort of misappropriating them as sentient, abominable intelligence, when in fact they're not. But that was sort of an interesting perspective to see from a normal human person, and it was really interesting to see them interact with the Imperial Guard in such a manner. It's a well-written story. It was very entertaining. I forgot to list the author of it. It was C.L. Werner who wrote that. But yeah, it was a good story, and the end is like pretty chilling and very, very AdMech, I think. So it was cool to see that kind of develop a little bit more. And then the last story here, Infinite Circuit by David Geimer, is close to being good, but it's not. Here's the thing. The main fulcrum of the engagement is sort of a Corpuscari Electro Priest leading a band of Fulgrites, and the main issue with that is these are diametrically opposed factions of Electro Priests that do not work together well. In fact, there have been entire civil wars between the two, and it just seems like something that could have been like very easily fact-checked. Maybe that wasn't established in the lore by the time the story was written. I'm not really sure, but it seems like kind of a huge ball to drop. It deals with Space Marines interacting with Electro Priests, and it's okay, I guess. The Space Marines are written better than the AdMech portions are, I think. That does seem to be kind of a common theme in this book, is the non-AdMech portions seem to be written better than the AdMech portions, which is really unfortunate because this is supposed to be, at least I thought it was supposed to be an AdMech book. Anyway, overall, it has a couple of good stories. It has a couple of clunkers as well. You're never going to hit them all out of the park every time, so, you know, that was to be expected. It seems like this should not have been marketed as an AdMech book. When you get to your first AdMech story and it's page 300 of a roughly 450-page book, something's gone wrong in your marketing. When this is Servants of the Machine God and over half the stories are not about Servants of the Machine God. The Titan stories mention the Omnissiah, I think, exactly once amongst all three of their stories. The Knight stories largely ignore the AdMech, and even the AdMech stories are sometimes written from the perspective of Space Marines or Imperial Guard. Like there's very little actual AdMech content here, which I say with a heavy heart because I was really wanting this book to be good, but I don't think I can recommend it. Another thing that annoys me, so many of the antagonists in this book are Tyranids. There's Nids in basically not every story, but there's Nids in like most of the stories as the primary antagonist. And it just gets dull. Like, yeah, they're a scary space alien, but there's like so many other things to fight in the universe. They deal with heretics a little bit. They deal with orcs extremely briefly. But it's like there's no Eldar. There's no like there are Tau in one of the stories, so that was kind of like a nice breath of fresh air to see some variety there. But like it's so many space bugs, and I wish there would be less space bugs. This also kind of carries over. I read The Great Work recently, which is Belisarius Caul's novel. And Tyranids are also the main antagonist there, along with some Necron boys. But it's just like, I'm getting tired about reading about Tyranids. I know they're an easy antagonist to write, but I think that they're also a not super interesting antagonist to read about. So please, there's so much variety and interest in this setting. You don't need to be space bugs every time. Overall, I don't think I can give this book right here over a 2 out of 5 rating, especially if you're looking for AdMech. If you like Knights, if you like Titans, it might be worth picking it up because, you know, 2/3 of the book is written for you. It's not really my thing. I was looking for tech priests and I didn't really find them, unfortunately. But yeah, some of the stories definitely worth reading. I would say Knights of the Imperium is a standout. The Enigma of Flesh is also another standout, but that's 2 out of what, like 10 stories or something that I thought were like notably good, and the rest were either fine or bugged me or just like actively bad. So that is the deal with Servants of the Machine God, and that is my lore review. So thank you for joining. If you want to see more lore reviews on Warhammer fiction like this book, I have been reading others as well. Please let me know with a comment or a like. And if you want to see more videos in general, make sure you're subscribed to this channel, and I'll keep putting out videos on Fridays, I think. We'll see if it's still going to be Fridays, but that is the current plan. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.